And we are going to get into some details today about ADA, the process to make an ADA sign, and the materials that are available, and a little bit about the process, and we'll even do a little bit of a demo for you. I'm going to kick it over to George here to kind of explain the webinar here, and then he'll kick it back to us.
Thanks, Emily. Just a friendly reminder, if you're new to a Johnson Plastics Plus webinar, if you have questions, you'll see a little questions tab on your right-hand side of your screen. You can ask them there. We'll have some folks answering those questions offline, and we'll ask some here of our experts, Chris and Emily, as well throughout the day, or throughout the webinar. Again, if you have questions, that'll be a good place to do that. We will have multiple cameras today. I think we should be able to have that all through one setting, so you won't have to swipe. But if you are on a mobile device and you don't see the close-up, you may want to try swiping up and down. That will shift between cameras. Again, looking forward to a great webinar today on ADA signage, how to create it, what materials to use. We got a lot of fun stuff. So with that being said, I'm going to kick it back over to Emily and Chris and let them take it away.
Thanks, George. So for those of you who don't know and are learning about ADA for the first time, an ADA sign is basically a sign that you'll see in any public space. It is required by most states for any public spaces, and there are certain requirements that need to be fulfilled in order for this to be a legal and compliant sign. I know a lot of times sign makers will shy away from making ADA signs or wanting to do ADA signs because they feel maybe they don't have the expertise or the right materials to make these signage pieces, but anybody can do it if you have the right tools, and we're here to talk to you a little bit about some of those tools today. The first component would be the sheet that you need to actually construct an ADA sign. So there are some requirements that go around the sheet itself, and because an ADA sign stands for Americans with Disabilities Act, it is meant for visually impaired individuals, and because we want to make these signs visual and compliant, there are certain requirements that surround that. One being that the sheet itself has to have a certain non-glare property to it. So this has a specific matte finish that is engineered, and the Romark product line has done a lot of work to make this a compliant sheet for the ADA signage. We have several sheet lines that will work for this product. We obviously have our ADA sign making materials. Those are coming in a variety of colors. We have them in a variety of gauges. We have them in the applique, which we'll get into here shortly. The main substrate you would use, and then obviously we have other product lines that have the same engineered matte finish that you can also use. So if you don't find the color that you need in the ADA line, we have a lot of other product lines that you can use. We have our Ultra Mattes line. Our Ultra Mattes line, we have a front Ultra Matte and a reverse. So the front meaning that the color is on the front side of the matte finish. The reverse is basically the color comes from behind, and you have a nice, beautiful, clear, matte engineered finish on the front. And it's just more of a finished look. So we have a variety of colors there. So if you don't find the color palette you're wanting in the ADE line, you're gonna find that in the Ultra Mattes line. We also have a line of cast acrylics. You'll see here in a variety of colors as well. Cast acrylic in our line has a good compliant matte finish on that, so you can utilize those colors as well for your ADA compliant signage. You're going to know if the signage is okay for ADA because in our website on the Romark color charts as well, you'll see a pictogram picture that'll have the man and the woman icon with a little circle around it. That will tell you that that is okay for use on ADA signage. In regards to other properties, we have our glow. If you have a very specific application where you want maybe a light hindered area, it's not necessarily the glow part isn't a requirement for ADA, but it's just a fancy add-on if you're in a low light area. We also have some thicker substrates for other areas of the country that might have a different requirement. One thing we will always preface to you is that you always need to check your local guidelines for ADA. Most of them are pretty standard across the country, but there are a few areas that have a little differences, and that you're always going to want to make sure that you're compliant in your area. So we would always check your codes there. For example, California has a 1/4 inch thickness requirement for the backing of the sign. So you're going to want to make sure that if you're in California making signs there, that you're compliant with those substrates. And we do have 1/4 inch available in certain substrates that we can help you with. All of our substrates are available. You can get them with or without an adhesive backing on them. So you can do that for the applique, which is the thin gauge piece that goes on the top, or the thick piece if you want to apply it to another piece. And George, you have a question?
Well, so the funny thing is you literally just answered the question we had, which was, could you just give a quick overview of substrate and applique and some of the terms you're using? But you kind of talked about it, but if you wouldn't mind just really quickly recapping for those who are new to the process.
Absolutely. Okay. So when you look at the basics of an ADA sign, we're talking about a few main components. You're talking about the back substrate here, which is going to be your main color. And then your overlay here, which is going to have your pictogram. And there's a variety of pictograms that are compliant. This is just an example of one here that we're using. With your writing here that says restroom, it has to have certain height requirements and raise requirements. And so that's why we want you to make sure that you're utilizing the right materials. And then down here we have our grade 2 Braille. It's always, it has to be this exact kind of Braille, and we have the beads, and we'll run through a demonstration here as well so you guys can see how that Braille is applied and some of the tools that we have to do that. So you're talking about the main components of an ADA sign: your applique, your back substrate, your letters, your Braille beads itself. Do you want to run through an example of how to place beads in a sign, or do you want to talk through some of the cutters and pieces we have available?
Sure, yeah. So I'll go ahead and talk about some of the tools that we have available for working with the Braille specific part of the ADA sign making process, as well as the applique process for the letters and pictograms. So I'll kind of start with the applique itself. So kind of what we were talking about just a minute ago with the applique material, which is that 1/32 inch thick material. That's really best used for the applique side of your sign, or the pictogram, or the letters, numbers, whatever you're making for your sign. And there's a couple ways to achieve the ADA requirement of the raised tactile function of your sign. One of them is to use a rotary engraver or a CNC router, where you can place your tool in your machine, and you can kind of lay a piece of the applique onto your sign substrate, and then you use your tool, whichever tool you need, and we'll talk about these in just a second. You'll cut out your shape, whether it's your letters, numbers, or your pictograms. You'll cut it out of the applique only, and you want to be careful to not go too deep, because you don't want to go into your substrate material too much. You want to mainly set your depth deep enough to go through just the applique itself. And these cutters here that we're going to talk about will help you do that. Okay, so let's see, let me start over here. So if we look at the couple of the different cutter styles we have, I'll just pull one of these out here for you. This is an example of a cutter that you would place into your engraver or a CNC, and you can kind of see the geometry of the tip there. So this is going to plunge into your material and cut the letters out for you, and it'll give you just a slight little beveled edge on the edge of your letters, numbers, or what have you. And that's generally what they look like. And then we also have these similar tools in a couple different configurations. We have real short shanked tools for engravers or machines that need that style of cutter. And then we also have a couple of different shank diameters here. So this is probably one of the more common diameters. This is a 1/4 inch shank diameter. And then we also have 11/64, which is a little bit thinner. And then for even smaller machines, you can get the same cutters in, let's see, this is 1/8 inch diameter. Okay, so the tips of these look just like the big one here. They're just scaled to be a little bit thinner for the smaller machines. Okay. So, kind of going back to my example about the applique, you would cut out your material or cut out your shape, and then the surrounding material you would then weed it away. You would pull it away, and your cutout shape should be left on your substrate of your sign. So that's kind of the traditional way of how ADA applique is normally made on the sign. There's a couple other ways to do it, but that's kind of the main one. Okay, so
George has a
sure,
question.
go ahead, George.
Real quick, we had a question about contrast. Emily, you kind of mentioned that. How do you determine, or how do we know what's enough contrast on the sign? And I may be jumping ahead a little bit
Yeah.
with that question, but I thought it was a good one, so I wanted to make sure that it got out there. How do we determine the contrast?
I was going to say, well, we actually have that figured out for you already. So we have some charts available on our website under the technical help. They're available on the JPP site as well as the Romark website. And basically, we're going to give you the color that you chose, and then any corresponding color that will work and that will have enough contrast for the visually impaired person to be able to see the difference. So there's a value there. It's complicated, but we've done all the work for you to figure out what's enough contrast to be able to utilize the two different materials.
And we'll have a link to that in
Absolutely.
the follow-up email that you'll get after the webinar.
Perfect.
Awesome. So, kind of looking back at the applique and the Braille applications here, I'm going to kind of jump to the Braille application. We have a couple of different tools available. Probably the most popular, most common one is our manual raster pen. And if you can see in this example, you can see where the raster beads have been inserted into the sign. And before these can go in the sign, the holes have to be drilled by a special drill bit, which we'll talk about here in just a second. And then you use this tool to insert the Braille bead into the hole to get your Braille. And so this is just one way to do it, probably the more popular way to do it, I would say. We also have another tool here we call the auto raster tool, and this does the same thing as the manual pen tool. They have the same mechanism on the end. However, the auto raster tool is designed to be inserted into a engraver or CNC router into kind of the spindle itself, where the machine actually holds on to the tool. And then after you've drilled your holes into your sign, you can place this device in your CNC router and then have the machine automatically set the Braille beads into your material for you, so you don't have to do it by hand. So those are kind of the two main differences, the two different devices we have for those. And if we look at the Braille beads themselves, we have a few different colors available. We have a clear color, we have white, which is opaque, and we have a black, which is also opaque. And then we also have a couple of other styles of beads available, some metal beads. These are silver, probably kind of hard to see, or stainless steel, sorry. Silver in color, stainless steel material. So a couple different bead choices for different applications. Okay. So if we talk about drilling the holes, there's a couple different tools we can utilize to do that. So we'll look at this guy here. This is what we call a Braille cutter. It's real similar to the profile cutter we just looked at. If I can get this off, there we go. But you can see the tip has a little bit different geometry to it, different shape. So what you're looking at here is, we're most concerned about this small tip right here. This tip is, the width of this tip is exactly the width that we need our holes to be drilled at, so that the beads actually form fit into the holes. So actually the hole is slightly smaller than the diameter of the beads, So when you push the bead into the sign substrate, it slightly stretches the bead itself and also the surrounding plastic material, so that it's actually physically holding onto the bead and it doesn't let go of it. So that gives it its strength, so that that's a bad example. So it gives you its strength so that the bead doesn't come out of the hole like that was not supposed to do. So so that's kind of what you need to drill your holes. And again, like the profile cutters, there's a couple different styles in different shank diameters. We have our 11/64 here, and then we also have our 1/4 inch, but also in a shorter shank size for machines that need that style cutter. Okay. And in addition to that, there's another tool we could look at here that you can consider for drilling your holes as well. Similar in principle, however, we call this a collet. A collet drill assembly. So this is the same style shank as what our cutter is here. However, on the end of it, there's a what we call a collet, and this is a little collar that you can twist tight or loosen. And these are actually designed to use very small precision sized drill bits that are the same diameter as the cutter here, but they're in the form of an actual drill bit. And you can use your shank or your collet over and over and just simply replace the drill bit itself. And the drill bit mounts into here, tightens in there, and then you load this entire thing into your machine to then drill your holes. Okay? So, and then it comes with some tools as well. We have a couple of wrenches that allow you to loosen and tighten the collet, better than you can obviously do by hand, because you need that drill bit nice and tight in there so that it doesn't come loose on you while it's running your job. And we have a couple styles of that as well. So we have our 1/4 inch, we have our 11/64 shank size as well, and we have a 6mm collet in here that's a little bit shorter, and then we have a 1/4 inch that's also, but it's also shorter. So again, for those smaller machine types, we got you covered.
I got a question.
Question?
We have a question. Someone asked if the auto raster tool can be used with an industrial CNC router.
Yeah, it definitely can. You'll just want to really be careful how much downward pressure you set on the CNC so you don't damage the tool.
They also asked if you can create the braille holes with a laser engraver.
Probably not. I wouldn't recommend it. It's not that it's not possible, but I would not recommend it, because not only do you need the hole to be a certain diameter, but you also need it to be a certain depth. And that depth
And
is
roundness, yeah.
in roundness, yes. So that depth is around 0.042 inches, or 42 thousandths of an inch deep, because we want that bead to sink into that hole enough to hold it, but we don't want it to sink in so far that the domed shape of the bead is lost and we are out of compliance then. So it's a
Probably
precise
not necessary. Yep.
yeah, precise process. So okay, all right. So without further ado, I guess we can demonstrate setting the raster beads into our sign example here. So this sign we already have our holes drilled, and so we're going to go ahead and use our manual tool, our manual raster tool, to set the beads in. So if we look at the tip of this real fast, we have a tip that has the opening that's just wide enough for the bead to pass through, and we also have a spring steel flap on the side here. This gives us our tension to retain the bead in the pen until you're ready to set it, in which the pen will compress, and there's a little pin inside here that then pushes the bead out past our retaining flap and through the hole. And when we do that, we want it to sink right down into the drilled hole that we just made for our sign. So that's kind of a roundabout process of what's physically happening or mechanically happening. So when you handle the manual pen here, you just want to grip the black ball. That's what it's there for. It's just for the grip. You want to hold it kind of like you would hold a pencil in a way, and you want to hold it over top of the holes of your sign, and you want to try to hold it as perpendicular as you can to the surface of the sign. You don't want to push the beads in at an angle because that can cause damage to the tip of the pen over time. It'll probably not set the bead correctly in the material either. Okay, so get down on it right here. I'm going to just position it over my first hole and just kind of line it up as best I can and just give it a push. And this is kind of a feel thing. Once you start to work with it, you'll kind of feel how hard you should push or how not hard you should push, so you don't want to break the braille bead or whatever.
George has a question.
George, go ahead.
Chris, while you're putting those in, I've got a question for Emily on the sheet material. Is any matte non-glare material considered ADA compliant, or I know you talked in the beginning too, and somebody may not have heard that, that there are some icons that we have on our website that let them know we've tested the non-glare for ADA compliance. Is that correct?
That's correct, and I would be careful just to choose any matte finish. For example, you could have a here's an example of maybe something that doesn't fall into quite a compliant piece that I was going to show you here in a little bit, but it is actually a brushed silver finish, but it has a matte non-glare surface on it. We wouldn't recommend this for ADA just because the brush underneath could be distracting to the applique on top. So just because something has a matte finish on it, it could have a pattern behind it. We would want you to make sure that you're using a material that's been tested and proven.
And for the applique part, that has to be tactile, correct? Has to be raised above the substrate. So I think in that sign too, would be another no-no, right? Because it's back painted.
Correct. It has to be raised. It has to be raised to a certain depth, and then a certain raised height finish. Here you can see where this is a pictogram. There's a term for it. I can't remember what it's called. It's more of a character, and it's not a compliant character. It's fun, but it's not exactly something that would be considered compliant within your local codes. So we would just advise you, even though you want to do something creative, that make sure that it's an actual raised pictogram that is a required pictogram for your state.
How is the applique applied to the substrate?
The applique, Chris showed a little earlier, it's drilled around the actual piece itself, and then you weed away what is not staying.
So the applique actually has an adhesive on the back already. So when you place your piece of applique on your sign blank, you touch it to it. You don't press it down hard, just enough for it to kind of grab onto it, and then you make your cut, and then that leaves the surrounding material loose enough to then be weeded away, and then you can press the actual symbol or
Some people roll
whatever,
it.
or roll it onto there, so it gets that it gets a nice bond to your surface.
And that adhesive becomes more permanent the longer it becomes a permanent adhesive once it solidifies.
Sets.
Yeah, on the sheet. Yes.
Another question for your applique material. You were talking about adhesive. Do they have to apply the adhesive themselves? Is there a particular adhesive that we recommend?
Sure.
Or
So you can get adhesive already on your sheet, so you don't have to worry about that. If you have a sheet laying around that does not have adhesive on it, we have the adhesive that you can buy in roll form on the JPP website, and you can apply that adhesive yourself. Again, you want a good adhesive that's going to not pick off. Anybody that's made a sign knows that people love to come by and pick. So you want an adhesive that's going to be permanent once it sets, so that those diagrams that you've put on your sign are going to stay for the long term.
Is the pictogram or text required to have a beveled edge that the profile cutter makes?
No,
It's not required.
No, there's no requirement for the edges of the letters or tactile imagery. The braille itself has to be domed, though. It can't be squared off.
Another question, Chris showed a lot of pieces, parts for rotary engraving, and you talked about the braille or for the holes for the braille that should be done with a rotary. But someone asked, can the other components be done on a laser, correct?
Absolutely. Yeah,
Definitely.
everything else can be laser cut. All of the ADA sign materials that we're talking about today can be cut in a laser. So they're all basically acrylic as their main component. So you can cut those in a laser, and the only, like he said, the only thing that you would really need to do to finish off that sign would be to drill the holes and then add the compliant beads to that.
So just going to show you guys, this is our finished sign, well, almost finished sign with our braille mounted in. I wanted to show you that if I scratch at this, the beads do not come out, and that's because the hole is drilled deep enough and those beads are set in there deep enough to not come out. They're very vandal resistant, we'll say. But you can also see, I don't know if it's hard to see with the camera, but you can tell that it's raised up, and it should be raised to the level that it needs to be compliant. And then kind of to complete the sign here, I'll just go ahead and stick this guy onto our second backer here. This is just an adhesive, and I'm just going to face it over here so I can do it halfway good. And there we go. And there's our finished sign.
And as you see there, as Chris demonstrated, you don't have to make just a plain square with the pictogram and braille. I mean, it's not that exciting. It's compliant, but it's not that exciting. And so at Johnson Plastics, we have ways to kind of jazz up your ADA compliant signs, differentiate yourselves or the building that you're doing work on. So you can add a lot of different things to an ADA sign. And it still have some character and make it compliant. As you can see, for example, with a product like this, you can add a wood backer. You can maybe laser a design on that. You can add some standoffs. Standoffs are available. We sell a variety of standoffs on our website that you can add to a sign. You can add maybe a printed backer. Here you can see we've cut two different shapes and applied one to the other. So you can add maybe a contrasting shape from behind. You can add, again, you can do your ADA on a clear piece of ADA sheet, and then you can add the color behind with some standoffs. So you can add a little bit of a raised feature there. As long as your main sign face is compliant, and whatever you have behind there is not visually competing with the main piece, then you're going to be compliant. But again, check with your local government for specific requirements.
Local regulations.
We have a question.
Yeah.
Sure.
Is there a certain font that needs to be used for the text on the sign?
We typically say the sans serif fonts are going to be your safest. You can't obviously get into any cursives, anything like that. So you're going to want those specific fonts. All of that is available. There are plenty of guides on the Johnson Plastics website. We have a landing page also that has all of our accent products that Chris was showing you today, all the cutters, all the braille beads, the kits and things like that are going to be available with that landing page. There's tons of resources on there, tons of guides, demo videos. There's just so many things that you can learn about ADA sign making, and you can, obviously find other ways to be creative by adding some other pieces of material with that. Any other questions?
Another question we just had coming in. How would a customer, or could a customer, make ADA compliant signs if they don't have a laser or rotary? Somebody asked about sublimation, but are there other technologies you can use to make those?
There is. So you can utilize a UV LED printer. There are only a couple of manufacturers, and we'll be happy to recommend what you need to do to create a UV LED sign, and we can put you in touch with those resources. But here is an example of a UV LED printed, and I don't know if you want to show that, but there's some technology out there that will print an actual raised letter and braille that is compliant and patented. So there are other ways besides the traditional raster braille method that are available out there with specific technology. And if you don't have the capabilities to make your own ADA signs, we can put you in touch with resources and those who can help you do that. So we're happy to guide you there as well.
Did want to make a quick mention too, because we've had a couple questions about seeing the whole process, and I know Chris did a great job of showing how to put the braille on the sign with the raster braille pen. We do have a video on our YouTube channel, and it's also on our website that goes through the entire process, particularly with the applique and the substrate, showing how to put the pictogram and the letters on. So that's on our YouTube channel, and if you go to jpplus.com and click videos up at the top, you'll find that in there as well. So.
Absolutely.
It's going to show you guys too on the topic of braille and what we're talking about here. This is our this is our braille kit that you can buy. Like if you're just getting into the pen technology for the first time, you may consider getting a kit instead of just the pen by itself. You get a booklet with it that kind of explains what you're looking at and how things work. You get a small ADA sign example with the kit, as well as a pack of the ADA material that we're just talking about here. So you get kind of a chain of all the different colors that are currently available for the ADA material. You also get your pen, of course, and a test sheet that shows that the pen is functioning correctly. Usually we'll leave a few holes open so that you can practice. If you'd like to you're trying the pen for the first time, you want to kind of get the feel for it, you can practice before you start making real signs. And then you also get some other tools in here that are going to help with the sign making process, maybe some of the cleanup process. We have a pick tool here that can help you if you're having an issue with a couple of your beads. You can help kind of dig a bead out if you need to reset one, or clean the edges of your sign after you've done your applique. We got some tools to help you with that. Also have a few of the different styles of raster beads available as well in the kit. So you have your stainless steel, we also have brass, and we have our 3 colors that we talked about. And these are acrylic, by the way, whereas these are metal, made of metal. Little brush to kind of help clean your sign substrate off if you need to when you're done. And then a thumb drive that's got some files and documents on here that will help get you started as well. Oh, and the funnel to help you fill up your pen. So that's kind of a quick rundown of the kit if you go that route.
This is my favorite part of the webinar because we have our eagle-eyed visitors, I guess, attendees who see things, and then when we were showing the close-up there was a sign underneath your hand there, Emily, that says exhibit. It's
yes.
that book. Can you show that and maybe explain what the technology was to use to make that one?
Absolutely. So if you look here, this sign here is, we talked about our color hues, cast acrylic. So the main yellow section is our color hues. It has got the matte surface finish on here. The word exhibit and the beads are actually UV LED printed, okay? So this is going to be, again, what we talked about, the printing method, not the traditional braille method. And then we have 2 pieces laid on top of each other. This here is just a piece of clear acrylic that has been, it's been UV printed on the back, as well as this has also been printed on the back to show from the front. So this is a fun little sign that has some layering involved. Again, like I talked about, you just need to make sure that the surface that has the word and the braille has that matte, non-reflective finish, so that you can still create some visual interest there.
We have another question. How do you know exactly where to drill the holes for the beads to be placed? Is there a template for that?
So there's no template necessarily. However, when you do the drilling process, you would first start out with a file on your engraver or CNC machine, And on that file, you would first lay out your sign design on there, which would have your text, and also you would set up where you want your braille to go. There's multiple ways to do it. You can do it manually, where you manually tell it where you want the holes to go. However, that's not the best way to do it, because braille, the way braille works is it's in what they call cells. So there's a series of up to 6 different holes or beads in one cell of braille. So really, you need the software to determine that for you. And there's some softwares, some that even come with some engravers that have that feature built into the software already, where you can literally type out your text and then translate it to grade 2 braille, not 1 but 2, and then it'll translate it to the exact cell sizes and positioning, and whatever holes are representing, what you're trying to say on the sign. It'll translate all that for you in an instant. And then normally then you would set your machine to do a braille process, and different machines are probably set up differently, but generally you would tell it to do the drilling process first, and then secondly, if your engraver has the ability, you can have it manually or automatically set the braille beads in there for you. Or if you don't have that feature on your engraver, you can just simply have the holes drilled, and then you can use the pen to manually put the beads in yourself. That's usually how that's done. All right, cool. I do want to mention real quick, if there's anybody out there that maybe already has the manual pen, we do offer a repair service. So you can send your pen in to us to be repaired. You can simply just send us an email, call us, whatever you want to do, and we can send you a link that will give you this document to fill out here. Can't really see it here, but it's just a document that just lets you write in the description of what might be going on with your pen, what it's not doing correctly, things like that. Just your best description of what's going on. You can send your pen in, and then we will evaluate it. We can tell you what we think it might cost to repair. Usually it's not too much, and then we can do the repairs for you and send them back to you. So we do offer that as well.
Great.
Yeah.
Well, at the end of the day here, we've got basically all the tools, supplies, and support to really get your ADA sign making business going from start to finish. We're also happy to take call-in questions and consulting, and show you where to find all of these resources on the various websites or landing pages that we have. We're happy to guide you and answer any questions that you have to get started. So.
Yep, I just wanted to piggyback off of what Chris was saying about the repair service. We do have that form available on our website to download, so that you can download that repair request and get that fixed. We'll take care of that for you. And as Emily said, we'll have a bunch of links in the follow-up email. We'll have links to the video and links to our color contrast guide. And again, feel free to explore our website. We've got a lot of resources available.
Absolutely.
Definitely.
Well, thank you for joining us today. Once again, I'm Emily.
Chris?
Yeah. And if you have any questions down the road, we're happy to help. And thanks for joining us.
Have a good day.